All right, hello and welcome to the Pump Freeze to FM channel. We're here, as you can see, FM 21. This is literally my first ever time on this front screen for this game. And what I'm going to do, you're going to see, you see I'm in the Brighton shirt. You're going to see setup now for all that Brighton save. You're going to see me set out, but also I thought it would be good, to get out there as a separate video, giving you just a little. If maybe it's your first time loading the game, it's my first time loading this game. We're going to set up the game, let you know what I'd usually do, and we'll play with some of the features. Maybe they're in the new one. Get straight into it. Not as if. Gritzka, have you just smashed that in your own net? What is this game? What is this game? What has he done that for? Oh, Sancho's chipped it down the middle. Big head, 1-0, come on. 1-0, the Borussia Dortmund. You love to see it. Julian Brandt in the 91st minute equalises. Dortmund are level. I mean, the easiest button to press is starting a game, right? Slight changes in there. So we're Brighton as usual. Well, as usual. First time ever, actually. Nothing usual about that. For me, anyway. But in terms of this screen, so what you've got here is all your options. You can be an international manager. So I could be England manager if I wanted to. Also could be, I could be Brighton manager. And then I can pick being England manager. We won't do that for this save. Maybe we will. Maybe club and country we can do that at some point. Brighton save's not going to last that long. I felt like I needed to do it this year. This was the year to do it. But yeah, in terms of setting up, going to be Brighton here. There's no custom graphics yet. We'll do that as we get through. See Leicester in the game, so they're sponsored by the game. But yeah, so I move on. When I start, you can click quick start. The game will pick its own settings for you. I think that's fine. I mean, that you can do that absolutely. I recommend though, if you want some more leagues or less leagues than what you think the game's going to pick, because the game will just pick the very basics with quick start. Advanced setup is what I'm going to go through today. So advanced setup, it will load through here. It looks like some of the loading times are very quick. My PC, obviously supported by Bing, not awful, but here we are. This is probably one of the most important screens in the entire game. What we're going to do, start with, so here on the left. This is where your leagues are going to be, your countries that are going to be loaded. So, for example, here we've got England, France, Holland, Spain, and Wales. The game has picked those, varying reasons, as you can see next to it. Reason for recommendation, they're a major nation in the case of Spain and France, or they're a nation of interest, which would be Holland, or they're a neighbouring nation like Wales, where it's good to have those leagues loaded. As you see on the right here, so the amount of players we have in this little drop down, we'll look at that specifically that in a minute. That will give you a more of an advanced tip. But in terms of game speed, pay attention to this. Try and keep it as high as you can. But if you want to load those bigger leagues, the game can run it. It don't feel like if it says half a star, it's not going to run it at all. It'll be a bit slower, but you have to make compromises in certain areas when it comes to it. Fortunately, I don't have to as much, but that is what it is. And, okay, moving down, game setup. This is where you can save your setup. So, for example, I can save this setup as base as I wanted to, and that can go as wherever it likes to. Or so then if you come to another game, you want to start another one again, similar. Load it up, it'll load it as it did in this save, for example. Now, button next to that, we're going to come back to that button because that's going to be important for choosing our leagues we're going to have loaded. Now, advanced options, use fake players and staff. Select this option to use a database consisting of entirely generated players and staff. Now, what that actually means is it's going to randomize names. It won't randomize nationalities of people that are already in the system. So there'll be a Lionel Messi, but his name might be Gonzalo Garchez or something. They'll have other names, but there'll be players you recognise. Some of the stats, I think, get jiggled around a little bit, but there'll be players you recognise absolutely. Disable first window transfer activity. Long blurb there. You can feel free to read that. I'll leave it on the screen. But ultimately, what it means is that in the first window, like it says, you can't do any transfer business. No one will be able to do any transfer business. It's to add that realism. We're going to leave it off because I think we want to see some transfers to start with in the Brighton save. But importantly, if you want that realism, especially this year, turn it on. You'll have a great time. You can get straight into the league action, deal with what you've got in front of you. I think that could be really good for certain saves. We may use it for one of the others. Do not use real fixtures. Speaks for itself. You won't use the same fixtures in real life. They've tried to model it as close as they can. That's why the game's come out a bit later this year, I feel like, because they've tried to work out where and when certain games are going to be played. And then disable player attribute masking. I'm going to have this turned on. Now, player attribute masking, there are two very different schools of thought here. Player attribute masking, effectively, if you have it on, if I have it ticked here, it means I see the stats of every single player in the game. I think, from a content creation perspective, we should be able to see the stats. We should be able to see what we can do, what the players can't do, and make that a decision that we feel like makes sense. It's not the most realistic system, but I think it's really important when it comes to this. Having it off, I think, is probably the more realistic way to play. It means you have a few more transfer busts. You have to do more research and do more scouting. But for me, we're going to do it. Let me know in the comments what you think, but that's how we're going to set up the game. Now, lowering down, prevent control of teams with managers in place. This actually could be really good if you want to start maybe moving around, start a journeyman is what it's called. When you move from club to club, maybe you start a club that doesn't have a manager, moving to a club that does, and try and move through the leagues that way. Very simple. You just can't take control of teams with managers in place. And then prevent use of in-game editor. We'll turn that on. We do not use the editor here, not for this. We might use it for some experiments or something like that. Expect to see them on the channel. I'm not going to use them here. Now, do not add key staff. I'm going to turn off. I want to have realism. I want to have the Brighton staff there to deal with to begin with. I'm not worried about building my own staff. I as a Brighton fan, having Bruno in the coaching staff, for example, is something I want. So we're going to leave that as it is. I am going to turn on, though, add players to playable teams. Idea there being, you want to have those players available. You want to have... It will give you some new gens to start with. It'd be nice to see some of those come through. Some of them are quite good at the beginning. They don't tend to be very good because there are already great youngsters out there, which, we can all go and find. I prefer that way. But add players to playable teams. Need to have that to start, to be honest with you, because there's going to be some teams that don't have quite the level of players, and one way or the other. But moving on now. Add and remove leagues. We'll do that in a second because I want to show you a little tip, which I'm sure it's gone around quite a lot recently. This drop down here we spoke about earlier, 22,180 players, not relevant really the number, but this is your base options when it comes to picking players and picking which players are going to be loaded into the game. You can go with just a base large database, which will give you, like I say, right there, it will give you more detail, and maybe in some of the leagues you haven't got loaded to play in, it's going to be it will just give you that little bit more detail, a little bit more players to pick from. But what I'm going to do, and I think because we're going to be Brighton the whole time, there's no need to be able to play these other leagues. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn them all off. And then we're going to go into this button here, and instead of large, I'm going to click the advanced button. Now, database size, I'm going to keep it as large. But then what I'm going to have in there as well, I'm going to have continents. I really want to have, so I want those players to come through in, so the African continents, the Asian continents. For example, last year, I had a player come through in Hong Kong who went on to be, I think he went on to be worth about 60 to 80 million pounds. Just because I had Hong Kong loaded, he generated in, it was important to have. So if you want to have those in your game, but you're not worried about moving to those leagues, what I do is I go to every major nation. I'm not too worried about Oceania. I'm going to be honest, there isn't usually too much talent. If there is, it comes through in Australia, so Asia's fine. And South America, we want those wonder kids from South America. So what I'm going to pick, I'm just going to pick top division clubs because then you don't get too much of a crazy player count. Now, so 91,000 players sounds like a lot, but a lot of the processing that happens in Football Manager happens because there are fixtures. The game has to use the non-match engine for working out results if you have the leagues loaded. But when you have the players loaded, you get a little bit faster. So like I said earlier, though, this is all I'm going to do. Players from top division clubs. I'm not worried about anything else in there. I mean, I could have current international players, but I'm not. This will cover those, I think. If we miss any international players, then not for us to worry about, really. So 1.5 stars, though. Looks a bit rough, right? I'm not sure that's something I'd be, you'd be like, oh, that's slow. It's not slow. It'll be fine. It will be playable. 1.5 stars to 2.5 stars. I think I always feel like if I have more, this is a personal preference. If I have more stars, that means I can have more players. So I always go and put more in. I'd rather have more now and not have to worry about it. Now, in terms of leagues, I'm going to do something a little bit different to what I usually do for this year. I'm going to turn these leagues on. I'm going to turn the main 5, which is your England, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. Top 5 in the world. Going to have them loaded just in case, maybe we want to move on after the save. I know I said earlier we might not. But we're just going to have the top divisions loaded there because I'm not worried about moving to a second division team in any of these leagues. England will keep League 2 on. I like to have League 2 on just for sending players out on loan, really, more than anything else. In fact, I might go down to the National League. So if you click on this here, this picks which leagues you can have loaded in each country. I've decided I'm going to have just the top one because in each of these countries. It's nice to have. It means you won't have too much in the way of fixtures being simulated away from your league. Keep that as minimal as possible, but it's also, I think, important for the Champions League so they actually play fixtures. And actually what you can do is turn it on to view only, which reduces the player count a little bit. but it just means you've not got too much of a worry. We're going to try it in this one. You can, and also once you get into the game, if you get in and you decide you actually really want to have more leagues, if you decide you get 3 or 4 years in, and actually I'd like to manage in the MLS, you can load the MLS later on. You can just, I'll show you that as well. We'll show you that at the end. But then this whole process, once you're done, we hit start game in the bottom right. What you can also change, I think this year they've added some real depth to this. So if you want to load in England, lots of different opportunities. This is basically your start date. So if you're like, okay, I just want to start when the league starts, I'm not bothered about starting any later than that. What's the point in that? What you can do is go, okay, I just want to start on this date. We're not going to do that though here. We're going to start on the early preseason, but you can put any league start on. It's actually quite good if you want to pick one and say, okay, I'm going to start in the future a little bit further on. Helps you maybe not have to simulate that far. But for this, we're going to start with just the basic. To be honest, I don't change that option much myself. I'd rather have more time in the preseason to be able to build a squad, to be able to work out a tactic, play friendlies. But if you want to start close to the season this year of all years, by all means, go ahead and do that, especially if you've got disable first window transfer activity off. It means you don't even have to worry about sitting for all that. So, and basically now, it's just a case of start game. Yep, start game. And the game will now set up in the background. So what I'll do, I'll quickly, just to finish off, I will show you how to add more leagues once you get there. She'll see you shortly. Okay, so just come back quickly, just to show you as well when you're setting up. You'll have had to have made a profile for a manager when you start the game. But from this screen, say for example, some people like to role play as a manager. Role players, I've seen people role play as Tony Adams at Arsenal. I've seen people, I had one where I was Nuno Gomez going back to Blackburn. One way or another. You can do that from here just by clicking the new profile button down here. I won't do that because it might mess with the system we've got here. But this is where you're going to see all your information. So you can see, I've not got the right date of birth. 1 second. Why do I not have the right date of birth? That changed itself. All right. Okay, so now on this screen, once I've accidentally clicked through here, this is where, and now if you listen to Miles Jacobson, the head of the studio at Football Manager, if you know, you know, this is where you can change your manager stats to start the game with, or attributes, let's say. Stats and attributes, we won't get into that one. What I tend to do, you can just suggest badge based on Brighton, or I can go, okay, I want to be, for example, if I wanted to be Bruno Saltor, who's in the coaching staff anyway, or I wanted to be Bobby Zamora, or someone that was coming back to the club, I could go, actually, Bobby Zamora did play, wasn't international, did play for England, I think, a couple of times. It's going to be a continental level, so my manager's going to have slightly higher stats because you have more experience. You can play with all this as well if you decide, actually, I want to have more in the way of coaching badges on the coaching side of things. Then you can put it that way, or vice versa. You can move this bar, nice little slider, grab it, pop it across and go there. Management style focus. Now, this is something I believe is new this year, or it might have been from last year. You can decide, actually, I'm a youth development kind of manager. So your youngster knowledge is going to go up, your technical and you're working with youngsters, all going to be higher. The game will pick for you. Actually, that might be something I use. So I'll select based on Brighton and I'll keep these 20s in the areas I want to keep it. So once you're happy with that, now it's time to get into the game. Would you like to, now it will give you the option to add another manager, but I'm just going to start playing. That's what you do if you say you want to play 2 different clubs at the same time. And now into this plus screen, this is from last year. Brighton and Hove Albion, hire Pumphrey. We're in the game. Lovely old job. Here we are. Now, you move on. It's going to give you some more background on the club. If you're at a club you don't know, I'd recommend reading this. I'm a Brighton fan, and the video this is for is fine. You should see this. It's going to come out similar same day, if not before, maybe after. Not sure the exact schedule. But hit sub to see it all the way through. Now you're going to get to this screen. This is going to show you what the club wants. So, for example, Brighton maintain the club's global reputation. Basically, all that means is stay in the Premier League. But this club vision is just guiding you where the club wants to go. So, Brighton wants to develop players using the club's youth system, which they've done quite well. There are a handful of players that are in the Brighton team. If you follow the Premier League, follow Brighton. They have players that fulfil these already. So, it's just about keeping that sort of soul of the club together, keeping those targets on the board and saying, look, we want to be mid-table this season. We want to reach the 5th round of the FA Cup and we want to reach the 4th round of the Carabao Cup. And then it gives you a longer term decision-making, sort of what's going on. And your board will say, okay, work within wage budget. If you don't do that, you could get sacked. So it's worth keeping an eye on these. But remember, importance favoured. If I don't sign players under the age of 22 for the future, they're not going to be that worried. And then once you're happy here, we move on again. Now, this is just asking you, would you like to schedule a press conference? I tend to do it because sometimes it can affect your rating with the media, especially this year. Arrange an inter-squad friendly to assess the squad. I do it. It's just good to work out sort of a tactic, a formation, see what you've got in the youth team, especially in teams you don't quite know fully. And then send an advice report from the backroom staff. It just gives you an idea on what needs to be done, who are your best players in certain positions in certain areas. That's going to be really vital, again, if you don't know the team to start with. Now, hit confirm. Now you're just going to save the game here. Hit that button as usual. Now, I'm just going to finish this up by showing you that how to add more players once you're add more leagues. Sorry, once you're there. So we're going to go up here, go into press the FM button. This is basically your preferences, your options. Go to add remove leagues, and now you can go, okay, actually I want this league to be playable. And then you hit confirm, and it'll show you the updated player count down here. So if I set these all to playable, it'll give you a slightly more updated view of what's going on, and it'll show you the date. So it's usually the summer. It will always be June or July. Usually for European leagues, obviously if you're adding another league that starts at a different time of the year, the league will come in at a different, it'll be the beginning of the season basically for any of these leagues that you add. So you just hit that confirm button, and then when it will only come into effect at the end of the season. It won't be instant if you start the game, so it's important to start the game with the right leagues that you like, and keeping it simple that way basically. Otherwise you'll have a whole season without the settings you actually really like. So ultimately, let's wrap it up there. I think that's really important. If there's any other tips, hints, little guides just to show you how to do certain things, feel free to drop those in the comments. Absolutely open to ideas. Also, you've just seen the beginning of the Brighton, the Brighton career here, the Brighton save. Get yourself on that sub button. Get yourself on it. The first episode's out, I'm pretty sure today. If it's not, blame this guy. Shout at me on Twitter, which is also down there. And hopefully Twitch this year. I'm not sure who we're going to manage on Twitch yet. I need to work out how it's all going to work. But get down there. Let me know what you think. We shall be there. Keep it going. FM's out. Let's get it. Come on.